And in Manusmriti, it basically occurs for the first time, and it refers to eternal duty, dharma, in that sense. It refers to eternal dharma, and dharma means basically duty enshrined in varnashram, and it's called varnashram dharma. Have you heard the word varnashram dharma? This is also being used lately more
So
often.
Mahabharat?
No, Mahabharata is a different thing, but varnashram dharma itself is called varnashram dharma. What does it mean? It says that the varnashram means varna system, right? In this varna system, the duties that are laid down in this varna system, to follow those is your dharma. Okay. This is the basic philosophy of varnashram dharma that is given in the Vedic and post-Vedic literature. What is that? What is your dharma? To follow the duty which is being given to you as per the varnashram dharma. That's your duty, and that's your dharma. Okay. So there's where you find it, and you also have mention of this dharma word in Bhagavad Puran also. Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam. In fact, Srimad Bhagavatam it is called. When was it written? Much late. It's Srimad Bhagavatam occurs in about 1100 CE.
So
This
you
is a
mean
period.
Gita?
Sorry.
What is this Srimad Bhagavatam? What is this?
Bhagavatam is a compilation of teachings of Vedas. Has nothing to do with
Okay.
Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
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 So it finds mention here also, and here also it comes in this reference. Now, that is here also it is mentioned as Sanatan Dharma. So the word Sanatan does not have a Vedic origin, but it does have an old enough origin, finds itself in Buddhist literature, but in a completely different sense. But in this sense, uh, it comes during the time of Manusmriti, which is basically 1st to 3rd century CE, right? And it is mentioned in this Bhagavatam also. Now, what is the meaning of this Sanatan Dharma? Sanatan Dharma means a dharma that has always existed. Means that the duties which have been given to different varnas duties, they are eternal and they have to be followed. Okay. And that is a Sanatan Dharma. Because that is what is being said in the Vedas. Veda don't call what is written in Veda as Sanatan. The later Vedic literature calls what is mentioned in Vedas as Sanatan. Are you getting it? That they're written in Vedas and they have been there because they have been passed on by the God himself, and by hearing that they were written much later, and that is the Sanatan Dharma. In fact, Bhagavad Gita also, if you see, Bhagavad Gita also mentions the Varna system, right? But that refers to, again, the Vedic conception of Varna system.
So is
Now,
there any other connotation to the Sanatan Dharma? Any positive, like in the sense, I mean, the way people talk about?
no,
Okay. So why
no, I mean,
people say like I don't know, I do not know. I've never searched about Sanatan. This is first time I'm like listening to.
You search the word
But I've
Sanatan.
heard, yeah, I've heard about like people. I've heard politicians say that it's very good, something like that. I don't know, Hindu is Sanatan, something like that.
Okay, so let us understand that feature now. That's a societal feature. Sakshi's point is whether there are any positive connotations, whether they're positive, what do you mean by Sanatan Dharma? The way the word Sanatan Dharma is being used in the literature is this. We have not come to its current understanding. This is how it is mentioned. So that's why I talked about how does it
Okay,
come
sir.
in the Buddhist literature, because it appears there for the first time. Then how does it appear in the Vedic and literature based on the teachings of the Vedas? Then that's how it comes. In that sense, it is coming. In fact, Bhagavad Gita, for example, it mentions that when Krishna, what is Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita is basically a conversation between Krishna and Arjun. Don't go into whether it is true or not, whether they existed or not, whether it's just simple fiction or imaginary story. Don't go into that. That question can be raised on Ramayana and Mahabharata also. But I generally say people keep asking whether they're true stories, whether these people existed, right? Whether it really happened. Well, really speaking, that's really not very important. Whether those people really existed, whether they really carried those names, whether they did what is written about them in those epics. No, it's not material, right? Maybe they did, maybe they did not, maybe they did exist, but in with different names. Maybe they did something, they did not do other things that are mentioned. What is important to understand is how do they impact society? That's more important thing to understand. How do they impact society? And that is true of all the literature of the past that you see. When you say that Manusmriti mentions all those bad things about women, right? Just go through a few pages of Manusmriti to understand what it has, right? Or forget about Manusmriti, which has large portion of it that can be put in a negative, orthodox, or a so-called bad, you know, say bad principles or bad teachings. But a more popular and a more accepted scripture such as Gita, Bhagavad Gita, would also have things which contradict each other. The entire literature, Vedic literature, is full of contradictions. And I mentioned that earlier, that there are certain things mentioned in Samhita, and exactly opposite things are mentioned in the Upanishads or the Vedanta, the last part of the Vedas. The same Vedas would contain completely opposite and contradictory things. So the Gita, which talks about, in fact, the fourth adhyaya, 13th shloka in Gita, the Krishna himself says that I have created these varnas, right? So what do you say? I have created means Krishna did not create, right? Of course, they were created far, maybe almost 1,000 years before him. He was only referring to that. Then Krishna says that it is your duty. What is your dharma? When Arjun says that in the war, when Arjun is faced with a problem, when he has to fight with his own brothers and his own kins, right? He says to Krishna, I can't do it. I can't kill my brothers, I can't kill my Pitamaha, I can't kill my this and that, but they're all relatives, right? I cannot do it. Then Krishna tells him that you will have to do it because it is your duty to do it. As a Kshatriya, it is your duty to fight and kill, right? And that is your dharma. So for dharma, you must do it. Of course, there are evils, good things, and bad things attached to that thing, that did the bad thing, and that's why they have to be killed. But it is fundamentally duty. If they did bad things, you can always leave them. You don't have to kill
But
them.
they will pollute the society.
Sorry?
They will pollute the society if evil is not killed. Anybody who is so evil, if the person is killing in the sense say capital punishment or anything, so if the evil is not killed, the person will pollute the society more, right?
Correct. So we're not going to that. We're not going into whether they did a right thing or wrong thing. What we're trying to understand is that they did it because that's part of the duty. It's a duty of a kshatriya to fight and kill, right? So there's no shying away from that duty, and that is dharma. So the concept of dharma is more about duty that is given to you as per certain scriptures. In fact, there is also a small reference in Gita where he talks about that your dharma is to stick to your duty, which means that if you're not doing your duty, so the concept of dharma and adharma, what is adharma? Dharma is if you are doing your duty. So you are dharmic, you're following your dharma. If you don't do your duty, you're doing adharma. So dharma और अधर्म ये शब्द आपने सुने होंगे, बट व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ धर्म और अधर्म? धर्म का मतलब है कि आपको जो ड्यूटी दी है आप फॉलो कर रहे हैं, अधर्म का मतलब है कि आपको जो ड्यूटी दी है आप नहीं फॉलो कर रहे हैं. तो ऐसी किसी ने अधर्म किया तो उसकी एक पनिशमेंट होगी, राइट? एंड देन देयर आर ड्यूटीज for certain people and there are privileges for certain people, but which means if you are a shudra, for example, in that system, and if you have been given a duty to say grow food grains for people, all the people, if you are not doing that, then you are doing adharma. If your duty is to fight, for example kshatriyas, if you're not doing that duty, if you're not fighting, when it comes to fighting, then you are again doing adharma, right? So as far as it is that your duty is a good duty and it gives you some privileges and certain power also, it's fine. But what about the majority of the people in that pyramid whose duty is to just serve the upper three varnas? What do? If they don't do their duty, then they are all would be bracketed as adharmi, and then there will be a punishment for adharma. That's the concept it comes from, right? Because it is considered to be your divine duty. It is your divine duty to do what has been assigned to your caste, what has been assigned to your varna, or assigned to you as a woman. Okay, so let us understand now. This is what has affected. Now, the same Gita. Of course, you can say, okay, this is a very negative feature, right? That there is a division of society within that's mentioned, and Krishna himself is saying that there is, I am the one who has created this. But in the same Gita, there are many good philosophical teachings, right? Which talk about a lot of other things, good things, many good things. Right? And the number of good things it talks about may actually outnumber the bad things it talks about. Then what do you do? How do you look at that book or that scripture? What is
So
the way?
both ways, I think, like Gita, where Karna was really a good warrior, but he couldn't become the king or take the place of Arjun because he was from a Shudra community. So there are many negative things in Gita, But there are positive things also about Krishna, which can really help people go forward in life. But there are a lot of negativities in terms of social order, which is highly unequal and orthodox and conservative.
Yeah. So how do we look at such? Now it's not, we're talking about Gita as an example, but then you will have to apply this to all that is written, right? All that is now being considered as the religious scriptures of Hinduism. Everything that is there has to be actually seen from this lens, isn't it? So you can't completely discard a scripture saying that it is all bad, but you can't completely accept the scripture saying that all is good and all is acceptable and all has to be followed. And that's the real challenge before the Indian society right now. Another important thing to remember is, if at all you have to take a book completely and say that, okay, this is the ultimate truth and it has to be followed, then how do you actually assess a book? How do you actually carry out an evaluation of a book? So there is one way of looking at it, which is what? एक किताब में, एक किताब है, उस किताब में कोई 5 चीजें हैं जो बहुत ही नेगेटिव है, यू नो, दी हुई है. उसी किताब में हो सकता है 10 चीजें पॉजिटिव भी दी है ना. एक बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट जरूरी पार्ट क्या है इसमें, ये जो कुल मिला के जो 15 चीजें इसमें लिखी हैं इस किताब में, उसने उन 15 चीजों ने मिलकर सोसाइटी को कैसे इम्पैक्ट किया. क्या ये 10 चीजें सोसाइटी में आ गई, या ये 5 नेगेटिव चीजें सोसाइटी में आई, और कौन सी चीजें इनमें से सोसाइटी में डोमिनेंट हो गई. Okay, that is a very important tool, that the test that you have to apply, right? And when you analyze it from that angle, कि सोसाइटी ने क्या ये 10 चीजें आ गई सोसाइटी में जो अच्छी चीज लिखी है, या फिर ये 5 चीजें ही हावी हो गई है सोसाइटी. तो इस तरह से जब एनालिसिस करते हैं, you will have to have your own understanding about this, but we are talking about history, so history is prone to interpretation. My interpretation is that it happens with most of the scriptures. Most of the time, it is the negative things that have impacted the society more and have stayed with the society and people for a long time. And the positive things, they have been sporadic in their impact on the society. Just take example. For example, say, for example, Ved, Rig Ved, for example. How has it impacted Indian society?
Badly, with casteism or Varna system.
Right? Or whether we have been able to take positives, if there are any, from that text. And which
I
are
mean,
those
there is
positives?
democracy in India. Like, we do not have the earlier Varna system where this person would rule or this person would become the priest. So there are positives, like we are moving, but there are a lot of negatives as well.
No, so what is the impact? We're talking about how did that impact?
Mixed.
Did it make Indian society a better society, with the positive things written there having its place in the society, or the negative things which are mentioned in these texts have impacted more, and those negative features Indian society has imbibed and carried on with it all these years? So unfortunately, that is the answer that you're saying, that because what are the features of the Indian society today?
Becoming less tolerance.
Becoming less tolerant, right? What else? Still divided, still driven by features of patriarchy. Women are still subjugated. There is a prejudice against women. right? There is caste system, and there's no sign of it's going away, right? There is a religious divide and intolerance that is increasing day by day. There is inequality, overall inequality in society, right? There is then that social equality and gender inequality also translates to economic, political, cultural, religious, linguistic, regional, all sorts of inequality, right? And that's the society that we have somehow been made to live in currently. The positives that are there in our society, in our scriptures, have not been brought out, have not been talked about as much as the negative things. But why should this happen? You know, Buddhism and Jainism, which had certain good features, almost died around 11th, 12th century in India. There were barely any followers of it. It existed in certain pockets, but it somehow dwindled to the extent of non-existence. Right. So the reason is very simple. You see that these things were being actually, till very recently, till about 150 years, there was a monopoly of authority on all these teachings. What is contained where, you know, किस ग्रंथ में क्या लिखा है, किस किताब में क्या लिखा है, उसके क्या मायने होते हैं, आपको क्या फॉलो करना है, क्या नहीं करना है, ये सभी चीजें बहुत लिमिटेड लोगों के पास थी. Only Brahmins couldn't do it, right? They are the only ones who could interpret what is contained there. Of course, Kshatriyas and Vaishyas could read and learn, but they didn't have much say. It is the Brahmins who had the ultimate say in what is written, what is the meaning of that, is that how you should follow it, whether you should follow it or not, how much should you follow it, if you don't follow, what happens, if you follow it and do a mistake, then we have a remedy. Everything was actually being put into the society by one set of people, right? It was not the society's choice to choose between all these good and bad things. They did not have an opportunity to read or learn. So if you see that pyramid, majority of people, almost 80% of the people that the society was formed, had no right to read or learn what is there in the Vedas, what is there in the Puranas, what is there in those literatures. Buddhist and Jain and other literature had almost been completely hidden, and that process happened during the Mughal period. And what was brought into the society was brought by this class of people. And what would they bring in the society?
Things which privilege them,
The
which
things that
benefit
benefit them. And that is how it is not the fault of the texts written. Of course, the texts are written there and there are good things and bad things, but we must understand that it was, the society did not read those things and take it from there. They were simply told that this is what it is, and they were told what was to benefit this class of people, right? And that is why you see only the negative things having impact in society and existing even now.
So
But of
what
course,
about today? Like when a large section of the reserved category people, like the should, I don't know what to call, like people who are scheduled tribe or OBC, who are educated now, they're still supporting the upper caste dominated unfair system. Why do they do this?
Okay, let's learn that. But you understand
Especially, yes,
what is
especially Mr. Modi and Amit Shah, who
no,
are
no, let's
very
not go into that.
powerful.
No, Sakshi, I know you're very interested in politics,
See, no,
but we'll
I'm
not come to
interested.
talk about
No,
that.
actually, I want to understand the psychology as to why do they do when they have so much power to reform the society and they
All
are
right.
doing disgraceful stuff.
Today, if we reach to that point, right, we have not gone beyond the 18th century. This is all happening during that period. It is now the Brahmins have started saying that, okay, you all people are Hindus, and your religious scriptures are these Vedas, your fundamental religious scriptures, which they themselves wrote to ensure that that they retain the superior position in religion and society both, and they are the ones who are telling all the people in the society, look, this is how it is and this is how it should be, and that's what is then established in the society and continues till date. But what happens is, and that was of course the accepted norm, right? वही accepted norm था till the time, and the Mughals did not do anything to interfere with these norms. They did not do anything to change any of these things. They simply went by that. They were there to rule, so they ruled without meddling with what was happening in the society. So the society kept on following what the Brahmins and the priests told them was written and what was to be followed. It was during the 18th, in the 19th century, means 1800 onwards, basically, that British start putting in their administrative systems. In doing so, of course, they take help from the only learned class that was there, which were again Brahmins and bit of Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. Shudras had no right to even look at the words of the Vedas or the post-Vedic literature. There was no question of seeking their help in setting up the administrative system. They also had the Mughal administrative system existing in the form of the revenue and land management. And revenue and land revenue and land management was the most important function, administrative function to be done. Because the British were here basically for what? Were they here for the welfare of the people? No, they were here for what? They were here primarily for economical reasons, right? They wanted to make money here and they wanted to take that money to their country. Another important thing why British stayed back here, they came here in 1608, right? But they stayed here because they saw a great amount of benefit, because that was the time, 16th, 17th, 18th century, when England was undergoing two major things, which was one, industrial revolution, which began in 15th, 16th century England. And the factories that were getting set up there, England is a very small land, right? It's not a big land. And that is how the British went around the world in search of raw material for their factories. So they would go, fight wars, defeat people, establish their administrative and political control over those territories, and force people there to grow the raw material that they needed for their factories to run in England, and they would sell back the products made in their factories to these people. So what was happening? What were the British doing all through those centuries? They were taking raw material from these countries, their colonies, including India, and they had many such colonies all over the world. Take that raw material, give it to the factories there, and the products would come back to the colonies and be sold there. And the traders would make huge profits in this process. And that's how the England